No, I think it's
All right, good morning and welcome to the second day of our School Board Leadership Council Budget Workshop. The date is March 12th, 2026. And this setup is a little bit different from yesterday where we have people come in and out. And so because Cressy's new to some of you and some of you are new to Cressy, I think it'd be good if we just go around and introduce ourselves just because we're all here today. So I can start. I'm Shannon Lindstrom. I am the School Board Chair.
My name is Cressy Maurer. I'm a school board member.
Ray Grogan, Assistant Superintendent.
Kate Bolton, Business Manager.
Diane Netto, Superintendent.
Sarah Blaisdell, Assistant Principal at the high school.
Katie Vitro, Director of Curriculum.
Jillian Daigle, Interim Principal at Blue Point.
Allie Wilson, Principal at Eight Corners.
Nicole Benham, Assistant Director of Special Services.
Gabriella Perrier, Assistant Principal at Wentworth School.
Kelly Crosby, I'm the Principal at Wentworth.
Kathy Terrell, I am the principal at middle school.
Jen Landis, I lost my voice. I'm interim assistant principal at the middle school.
Michael Yates, Director of Athletics Student Activities.
Hey, Terrio, high school principal.
John Kelleher, Concerned Citizen.
Jillian school board member.
I'm Larry Kane from Town Council. I just snuck up to the table.
Perfect, thank you so much. We are going to get started today with the curriculum and improvement of instruction, but before we do that, can we just call attendance?
Yep. Ms. Lindstrom?
Here.
Ms. Tarpanian is absent.
Absent.
Mr. Kelleher?
Here.
Mr. Peenhoff?
Here.
Mr. Rockensteiner is absent. Ms. Jacobs is absent. Ms. Maurer?
Here.
That's everyone. All right. We'll turn it over to you again.
I think if we take a look at the slide deck, the first thing we will do, the next thing we'll do is Pledge of Allegiance, please. Join us.
One day you'll get it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good morning, everyone. Really excited to see everyone here today. We've been spending a lot of time with our school board. Last evening, they got an opportunity to hear from all of our departments and from central office and to hear a high-level overview about the work that we've done as a full team to develop the proposal that each of you will, in your parts, bring forward and describe to the board. So we're really excited for that opportunity for them to learn more about where we've been this year and where we're looking to go in the coming year. So with that, I will kick things off, and we are going to start with Katie Vitro for Curriculum and Instruction.
Thank you. So I'm going to jump right in with just a few facts about the curriculum department's operation this year. I want to just remind you of where we ended with achievement in reading and math on last year's Main Through year. These are the same style of facts that I gave you last year. So on average, 82% of our students in grades 3 through 8 and 10 scored at or above grade level expectation in reading, as compared to 64% at the state. In math, that was 72% compared to 49% at the state. And those are numbers that we're really proud of, but there are always opportunities within that work, as well as in other subject areas, to consider the ways in which we can continue to build our evidence-based practices to improve learning and to improve achievement. So a big and critical part of that is our ongoing curriculum review. This year for review, math, visual arts, and performing arts were all slated for review, and they've all been meeting. Math has met all year. 36 educators have been involved in that process, and that has been a really big undertaking because very early on, the team elected to investigate a new core resource. So that program has been under investigation, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in our goals and priorities for next year. Additionally, we've had our visual arts educators and performing arts educators come and speak together about their vision for the long-term success of those programs in the district. At the same time that vertical work was beginning for those teams this year, other phase level work continued, including STEM, ELA, and social studies. In terms of successes and accomplishments, I think there are always things that are going on in the curriculum that are repeated and cyclical. A lot of the curriculum work is very much a marathon and not a race, and so we encounter the same opportunities for success every year, and one of those I think that we do very well here in Scarborough is our professional development. For example, in October, our GSCA partnership allowed for the participation of educators in these fields you can see on the slide. That's a unique opportunity in which they can come together with educators of like jobs across Cumberland County. And we were really pleased in Scarborough to host the occupational therapists and physical therapists here on our campus for that session in October. And then we're really excited about our March in service, which will happen next Friday. We have over 50 unique one-hour presentations happening through the morning and approximately 400 participants. So the scale to which we provide professional development is really profound. It's on par with many regional conferences. So that's something for our team to be really proud of. I won't try to steal too much thunder here because I suspect that our primary teachers will speak to this, but we were really excited to move forward an opportunity for Spanish instruction at second grade this year. So our second graders now have a world language opportunity. And I'm really excited that our curriculum review and our data discussions have continued to inform teacher instructional moves, these professional development plans, and the curriculum materials that we purchase. Our work is really grounded in that evidence-based practice, and it really informs all of those pieces. So in light of all of that work, we have some really key goals going into the next year that have an impact on the budget. The first is that in our regular review of the curriculum, our science and technology review will begin. You'll have noticed that the STEM team did meet this year, and that's because they really wanted to come together before their review began to create a foundational framework from which to begin. The team hadn't met in years, and there are numerous educators from 3rd through 12th grade who wanted an opportunity to lay the foundation for their scope and sequence so that when they came together to do their review, they were better prepared to dig into the meat of that. So that's primed to go for next year. One of the really big and key pieces of the curriculum budget this year is the recommendation from the vertical team that we move forward the adoption of a new core resource for K through 8. We're really excited to have gone through a process that included a deep dive into the standards alignment, the evidence-based practices, and the resources within the programs that allow for teachers to better instruct their students because there's less supplementation and better alignment to standards. Currently, the team is slated to meet on March 25th. They've narrowed it down to 2 programs, and we've placed a placeholder in the budget for a program to be moved forward, and they'll solidify that recommendation for which of the 2 core resources they would like to move forward. They've been really clear in their recommendations that the math instruction is heavily supplemented, and there are key pieces in terms of differentiation, small group instruction, and intervention that would benefit from a more cohesive and comprehensive core program. And those were core pieces that they looked at in terms of determining which one to move forward. So we'll look to move that forward, and that will include an investment in the implementation of instructional supplies that include digital and print teacher materials, digital and print student materials, and the related professional development to ensure that there's a high level of fidelity to the program that we adopt. Both of the programs that we're looking at have an efficacy rate that is supportive of positive achievement, and in investing in that fidelity to that implementation, we better ensure that that efficacy is realized. And then another key goal of our department this year is a position realignment. We currently have 2 curriculums, K-12 curriculum specialists. One of the positions is unfilled and has been unfilled. We have not been successful in filling that in the way we had hoped to. The other is currently filled, and it's vital, I think, to move this to an assistant curriculum director position this year by eliminating these two positions. There are a couple of key things that I think this does for us. The first is that it moves the position from 210 days to 260 days. And it also provides another person in the curriculum department with key decision-making authority. That allows us to better divide the workload in terms of our work buckets, and it also provides a lot more support in the wealth of curriculum work that happens in the summer, as well as our summer programming for Summer Read Up, for Middle School Connections Academy, and supporting the high school with credit recovery. So that will provide a lot more support in terms of that as well. It would also better allow us to divide the work throughout the year as vertical teams move into phase level teams. There's a lot of management there in terms of moving those groups forward in their work and their recommendations. And just as importantly, the reductions of the two positions and the consolidation into one would be a cost savings to the district, and that's really important at this time as well.
Yeah, and the cost savings is in the realm of $50,000. So it's a significant cost savings. But as you've heard Katie say, it's not being recommended for the cost saving. It's really being recommended as a realignment to better position us to provide the type of support and decision making that's necessary, given all of the robust curriculum work that's happening in the district. So it's very rare that you can find something that is value added and fiscally responsible. We've had that conversation
Sort of like
recently
pre-K.
about pre-K, right? And so I think when those opportunities come up, there's certainly things for us to really consider seriously and take a look at what's our bigger picture and responsibility.
Can I ask a question? Sure. So there's the whole package, as you say, there's training and there's obviously materials digitally and print. You have a sense of what that is, the sort of general fiscal, big ballpark figure, I understand.
Yeah.
That change. I know, and I'm not questioning the change, I know it sounds like it's extremely necessary. Just want to understand the sort of the fiscal side of it.
So the initial implementation is always going to be the biggest cost point, and then it drops off significantly in the following years because the materials have been purchased for the teachers. So the first year we're looking at a cost increase of approximately $190,000 in order to purchase all of those materials. That is the total, let me step back for a second. The total is really closer to about $250,000, but we currently invest in consumable materials K-8 in our current math program at about $62,000. And so that is money that would be in level services anyway, and it is included in this investment. And so when we back that up, it's about $190,000. That said, one of the programs that we are looking at has a universal screener and assessment program that would compete with the current iReady diagnostic for math that we have at K2. We would not want to invest in both. So if we were to go with that core program, we would also see a reduction in that program we're also using. And I can't predict entirely what that cost difference would be, but my initial thought would be that it would be around another $20,000 that would offset.
Okay.
And again, as you heard Katie say, their team is going to be meeting to make a decision in the next couple of weeks. And so just as you heard us say last evening, that there are a lot of shifts that happen between first and second reading, this would be another example of one that we will have a more refined number once the group makes a decision, and then we can reassess what are the pieces that we have an opportunity to back out of the current proposal, because depending on which program, there will be things that will replace.
Another thing I might point out, and this is a little more high level, is about the way that we budget an implementation like this. You notice that Katie said that there's money in the buildings.
Right.
for those consumables, that's because we've had the same curriculum for 10 years, something like that. And it's just been ongoing, right? So when a new curriculum is implemented, the bulk of the upfront cost goes into the curriculum budget so that you're not taking the middle school budget and going like this and then back down again. And that's a typical pattern. So you'll see implementations of new projects, and then the following year, all of that sort of shifts and you're back to that normal baseline of consumables in the buildings.
Got it, so you have a temporary bump.
Right, and by having that in curriculum, it might be math this year, it might be STEM the next year, right?
Right,
And so that budget also stays kind of more smooth, right?
Then you go through a regular process of curriculum review.
Of updating each,
And updating,
right, each content area over time. So it makes it easier to kind of follow the trajectory in the budget without there being a little bit here and a little bit there. Or a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So said another way, it's 250,000, but it's 190 new asked,
Yes, approximately.
Depending on the program.
depending on which you
Depending
go
on
with.
the
Yeah.
Right. Right now, we're talking placeholders based on what they've looked at so far.
Do you think, really quickly, you could explain, and I know this is my ignorance, and perhaps I'm the only one that would have this problem, but I'll just openly admit, I assumed, I cited on the math curriculum review as the, but I assumed you just gave the teachers the books and they kind of did their own thing with it. So can you kind of explain the actual process and why there's a PD part of this?
Here you go.
Yeah, so
I said it was ignorant.
That's a really great.
Up front.
That's a really great question, Shannon. And I invite any of my colleagues to jump in as well because they're always heavily involved in that work. But when we undertake a new curriculum, every curriculum is underpinned by a pedagogical stance. And that pedagogical stance informs the ways in which the curriculum is rolled out and the emphasis of certain instructional strategies within that curriculum to ensure that the way the curriculum is instructed results in positive achievement. So, for example, the underpinning of the pedagogy for our current program for Math in Focus may not match, is unlikely to match the one that we adopt. Both of the programs that we're looking at do have some really key changes in terms of instruction that would require us to really invest in the professional development. The first is in the emphasis of math discourse as an instructional strategy. So talking and writing about math becomes a key part of both of these programs, and the ways in which we facilitate those discussions would be a point of professional development for many of our educators. Many of them do that on their own, having developed themselves through different workshops, but where that is a key piece of the instruction of the program, that would be vital to the professional development of all our math educators. The other thing that would be really essential is Math in Focus is almost entirely a whole group direct instruction model. Both of the programs that we are looking at have whole group instruction, but they also have small group and intervention instruction. And that small group direct instruction supported by center work requires teachers to relook at the routines and procedures they have in place in their classroom in order to ensure that students are able to engage in those centers with confidence and competence and can be autonomous while the teacher is working to provide direct instruction to a smaller group of students. And that takes practice and that takes coaching, and this is where not just the professional development implementation, but our instructional coaches and our teacher leaders will be vital to the success of that. And so that is a shift in instructional practice that has been proven in research time and again to be a positive impact on students' achievement, and which would require that investment in professional development. And then as we continue on, the refinement of those practices through professional development allow teachers to fine-tune those skills so that they can become more adept. Once they get really confident with their curriculum, they can then begin to consider the instructional moves they need to make in light of specific student data. And in doing so, they're better able to meet students where they're at and help them see achievement through that. to expect teachers to just take a new program and read through the thick volumes of instruction without the support of expertise would undoubtedly lead to failure at some level.
Yeah.
So that professional development is really vital to the
And I
investment.
think if you think about it from an investment standpoint, if we're investing over $200,000 in new curriculum, we want to guarantee that that we're going to realize that investment, right?
That it's going to be
And
used
so,
with fidelity.
so that means that, right, like it's being taught with fidelity, that we're not making assumptions that every educator that we hire in this district comes to us with the exact same skill set, and because that's just not accurate, right? And
Well, I
so
think
we have
specifically
to
for math,
nurse
right?
that.
I mean, math and ELA are our biggest core subjects taught by, at K-5 at least, taught by every teacher.
And then also from like an equity model, we want to make sure that every kid, regardless of the classroom they're in, is getting the same high level of math instruction.
Right.
And the curriculums you're considering are allowing teachers to do more direct one-on-one in smaller groups. That's one of the.
That's a component of
one
both of the
components
programs
we
we're
like
looking
about
at.
Right.
Instructional curriculum, because it allows you to sort of really focus in on students at whatever level they are, and sort of work with specific groups that need specific kinds of attention.
Yeah, and it went both ways, I remember in the last year they were down to, so students that needed advanced help and students that needed, they didn't quite get the topic and needed a little bit more additional help to get there. So it included both
That's
sides.
nice.
Like an enrichment
More
side
challenge
and
to one and additional support to another.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and think about how education changes over time, and when you have the state-of-the-art math curriculum from 2014, you might be thinking in a different way in 2026.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sure additional questions will come up, so don't hesitate to reach out and ask those.
I should say that really generically, like as you folks are sort of taking this all in and maybe reading through some of the materials, we're gonna task the finance committee with going through and getting answers to any questions that arise or more information about things you wanna dig deeper with, so it's understood that you might not have every last question today, right?
Excellent. Anything else for Katie at this time? I'm gonna continue to try to keep us on time here this morning. See if I can do a better job than I did last night. All right, with that, I think we will move forward to our primary schools. And so we've got two of our principals here today. And so the floor is yours.
Excellent. We have been working with Shooting Stars and have had a pre-K classroom there. 16 students have been there receiving public pre-K programming. It's been, I know that several of them are coming to, or many of them are coming to Eight Corners next year, and we had some join us last year, and it's wonderful to have these students have an opportunity to have a pre-K program. You can really see a difference when they enter kindergarten. The curriculum is aligned to Maine Early Learning and Developmental Standards. We have had this program is required one adult for every 8 students, so that does make staffing more tight than it does at the K2 level, but these kiddos are young and they need that extra support, so that is really important as we look forward to potentially having more classrooms in Scarborough. Transportation is not provided at this time for this current, but we are really looking forward to moving forward with this program and expanding. So I don't know if Katie, you have anything else to add from your perspective, or anyone else. I know I would not been super involved in the program, but really seeing the benefits already. All right. So this year we have been able to hire a K2 librarian. So she has been working among the 3 primary schools. It's really been a great experience to have this position filled. Some of the things that she's been able to do is to really expand our student-centered approach and having read aloud, interactive read alouds and activities for students within the library programs. Being able to expand how the curriculum and the library program are connected. So working with grade level teams, what are you doing? How can we support you in the library? And going into classrooms as well. I'm witnessed going into the kindergarten classroom and teaching them about a program through the library, Pebble Go. So how they can start to do research that is safe and something that they can access. So really an awesome thing to have. Katie mentioned this. We have had, it started at Blue Point, right?
Yeah.
So Blue Point and Eight Corners is just wrapping up their experience with second grade having Spanish. They have one 30-minute class a week for a full trimester. And so that has been able to let them, make connections between the English language and the Spanish language, looking at vocabulary. She's done some connections to what they're doing in the classroom, but also around just events at that time of year. So making those connections both ways. Students have had a blast. I in particular say that at our school, some of our Spanish-speaking students have been so excited about this opportunity. Some students that struggle in other ways, but they are proficient in Spanish and can really shine during this time. So it's been really valuable for our students. I don't know if Blue Point had anything to add on that, but.
Saw the same things, very valuable. I think prior to this, we had some students that may have looked at their Spanish-speaking skills as something that held them back. And then all of a sudden, with this, realized that they had something that other students wanted to possess as well. So it was very valuable to see them all of a sudden shine in this area. So it was wonderful.
Yeah. Our data teams and the MTSS process has really been a large piece of our work again this year. And we've really started to see the benefits of that. It's been a lot of work and a lot of change for how we do things. We meet every 12 weeks, and there's an assessment period just prior to those meetings so that we have fresh data to look at. We look at all students with a criteria for who meets the criteria for getting support and who does not. And we are able to go through all of those students, make a plan for those students, who's going to work on their goals and support them. And then we start the process again. We do have a mid-week check-in every 6 weeks on those particular students who are in the MTSS process to make sure that they are making progress and if there's anything else we need to do for them. So oftentimes what we're seeing is they're actually meeting goals partway through, so we're adjusting their goal and starting to work on something else.
And that process really allows for a collaboration piece that I don't think we had before, where it's looked at like these are all of our students and not just one classroom. So it's really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And then again, our pre-K partnership, I think that has been a wonderful thing and we're just so excited to have that moving forward. Our goals and priorities moving forward, we're continuing to see as students come in much more heightened needs, especially socio-emotional, behavioral. We have a large number of students coming in from CDS already identified with needs, but also students who are not identified, really a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry and fear, and so really supporting those students to feel safe and secure where they are at school with us, and so that they're able to access their learning. So it's just something that we're continuing to work on. How can we best support those students so that they're able to access? Continuing to implement this formal data review process with our data teams. It's just going to continue. We're going to need to streamline things, make tweaks here and there so that it's working best for students and staff. Safety and security, always something we're looking at. What can we, where can we put a camera to make sure that we're able to see everybody or do what we need to do. We're really looking forward to the school builds and having those new spaces, but just as we continue to work through. in our current buildings, making sure we're as safe as possible. Which kind of just goes into the final one and just ensuring that all students, all families feel welcome, included, and safe and secure at our schools. How can we get those families into the building who, had a bad experience themselves in school or feel that we are judging or for whatever reason, and how can we make it so that they know that we are a team and we can support and help them so that they feel their best when they're with us.
Questions for K2?
Wondered if, you were seeing an increase in early social, emotional, behavioral. Do you think is it tied to economic anxiety or more precarious economic conditions among families? I'm not asking you to speculate. I don't know if you're seeing a trend in sort of, maybe less time with parents with less time to parent, or and leading to having to work more and less time. I don't know. Just some thoughts as to why you think some of these trends are changing.
Not sure. I know that we definitely have seen. Everyone hates to blame COVID, but we've seen a change in students coming in. The students we have in our kindergarten right now are students who were born that year, and so they spent their first 2 years of life in their house or looking at people with a mask on, and so that completely shifted their development, and so having some of that impact has definitely. So we're curious to see as time goes on, does that shift back? Or is this sort of just a new reality that we're going to be needing to support families? But we don't really know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I do think it's important to note that across the state, there's been a significant increase in students who have the behavioral, academic, and social emotional needs. Just in the last 10 years, the state population of students who are receiving special education services has gone up by 4%, which may not sound like a big number, but when you're looking at our population as a whole, it's a really big number. So I think we're seeing the same trends that everywhere is.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was more of a societal thing.
It is definitely, yeah.
Happening in Scarborough.
I mean, I was in a different district and it was the same thing there prior to being here, so.
4% might not sound like a lot, but when we're asking for 17 new ed techs this year alone, on top of the 22, right, over the last 2 years?
We're asking for 6 this year.
Oh, what is plus 17?
That was trying to represent the folks who are below in the grid of unfilled positions.
Right, because we have some contracted positions currently.
Yeah, we were struggling with that chart because we wanted to say this is how many ed techs we have today, but we also have unfilled positions, and those are part of our level services budget.
So if let me try to reword. If we were fully staffed, we would only need 6 new positions, but because we're not, we still need a total of 17.
You need to find 17.
Because we have open positions.
We have people in those positions, right? So it
people
wouldn't
are
be
working.
accurate to say that there's 17 unfilled. We are, contracting with an outside provider because we have not been successful in, finding enough candidates to hire through Scarborough Public Schools.
Right. So
right.
the
And
actual empty positions.
So they're
right
not
now are
unmet
3.
needs, if you will, right?
Right.
And that money for those ed techs is part of this budget, of the current year's budget, and money that we are paying out, right? To an outside entity that's doing that contracting for us. And so, as you saw in the high-level overview last night, what's being proposed is 6 additional positions, and Chris will talk about that more when we get to the special ed piece today, but we are looking for 6 additional positions, and that really is to address the needs of incoming kindergarten students.
Got it. So 11 contracted currently plus the 6 new equals 17.
Give or take, yes.
And on the chart, should the teachers be a -2? Did we find 2 positions?
No, they collected,
They're still teachers. So it's pre-K,
They're moving to pre-K.
right, it's pre-K through 2, so it's not labeled that way, but the teachers would still be in that grid. The -1 is actually, well, hang on. Which page are you on, Shannon?
26.
Say it again?
26.
Is that the combined curriculum positions?
No, that's in the curriculum department. Yeah, I guess it depends on how we represent it. Oh, here's why. It's -2 + 1 because of the Title I position moving into the local budget.
Oh, okay.
And we talked about that a little bit last night.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
That may not stand depending on what we learn from the feds between now and second reading. It may not be necessary, or it may not be fully necessary if we get enough funding to put a portion of that back into Title I. But it's, if you look down at the -1 on grant funded, then add the +1 to the top line. So 2 teachers go to pre-K, which actually we should change this to pre-K too, I guess, if we're gonna be pre-K people.
Yeah, yeah, that's not a bad
We can update that
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
page. Anything else for K2? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to Wentworth School.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit about Wentworth. So I think Katie alluded to the first couple of things already in her curriculum update. So in the interest of time, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but our main through-year results and accomplishments annually amongst our students are something that we are super proud of. Our students are consistently outperforming the state averages by a significant margin, and that really speaks to the collective impact of the work that we're doing. So very proud of that in terms of fast facts about Wentworth, and then continuing at the same time as having some academic success, we are seeing growing strengths in our social emotional learning data as well. And so we recently received results from our annual panorama survey, and there are marked strengths in supportive relationships and self-management, which is a growth area, a continued area of emphasis, and something that I'll talk about a little later with our ruler curriculum as well. Our Learning Commons is also something that's going to appear in a couple of places in my Wentworth presentation. It is a vibrant hub for inquiry and discovery. I believe that did you have your budget meeting there last night?
we were in your room.
Yes, so you saw the beautiful space, which is amazing, and just a quick little sidebar, one of our ed techs in the Learning Commons was just recognized at our school-wide assembly yesterday as the Learning Commons Support Member of the Year for the state of Maine. So that was really exciting that Massillon came and presented that to her. So strong circulation data, over 17,000 items so far from our Learning Commons among our students have been checked out and accessed, which really reflects very high levels of student engagement. And our clubs are something that we have really put an emphasis on since COVID to increase family engagement and student engagement beyond the school day. At Wentworth, it's just the first time that kids are able to sign up for something that takes place after school with their friends with this large degree of choice. And so it is a really exciting and special opportunity for them to participate at a very low cost to both families and the district. It's been a very enriching opportunity for all of our students. And that really connects with our strong community partnerships. Ms. LaPerriere and I have really leaned into bringing back our evening family engagement opportunities. That was something that was a very regular part of our practice prior to COVID taking place, and now we've just really leaned into that was something so special and wonderful. Let's really put some effort into bringing this back. And at our winter family engagement night, we had over 520 attendees. So that was very special, I think, that you attended and stood in the long, long line out the door waiting to come in. It was, that is something just really exciting to see a line of students and families and community members waiting to come into their school, and to see kids so thrilled to show their families around their school. And there's something like special about being at your school after dark anyway. So that's been really a really wonderful commitment this year. Okay, and so for successes and accomplishments over the course of this year, I mentioned our social emotional learning emphasis, and Ruler has been now in our third year of implementation. That's our evidence-based SEL curriculum that we are implementing school-wide. To take you on that journey, the very first year we emphasized adult SEL, and as Katie had mentioned in curriculum, a very heavy focus on the professional development around a guaranteed and viable implementation of this resource. Last year, we were all pretty lockstep with what we were doing with our Ruler lessons. So we would open with a school-wide assembly that was kind of launching the lesson, and then everybody was doing similar lessons with the Ruler signature tools. This year, we have moved into very specific grade level differentiated ruler lessons. So in addition to those signature tools, we're really diving into the SEL content, vocabulary, and meaningful work that is specific to each developmental phase within Wentworth. So that's been a really important and meaningful shift that's been led by our teacher leaders who've been on the implementation committee since the very beginning of this Ruler implementation. It's work that we're very proud of because it has been such a collaborative lift and something that our teachers have leaned into and recognized as very important. We've examined our panorama data each year and continue to shift the emphasis where our students are telling us they need that support. The school resource librarian I mentioned as part of our fast facts, but similarly to K2, this is kind of a 2-year investment finally coming to fruition. So this was actually approved in the FY 25 or 26 budget, 25 budget, and we were unsuccessful in finding a candidate. And so we had kind of a pieced together plan over the course of that time, but continued on the search for finding a dedicated librarian for both Wentworth School and for the K2 phase level, because previously, or for many, many years, that has been a shared position. So serving over 1,300 students and 200 staff across 6 buildings. It just was, 4 buildings. It just was not a sustainable model. And so now that we have a dedicated librarian, we've just seen the Learning Commons vision absolutely come to life. And that's been something that's been years in the making. That space was built in 2014 when we opened our school, specifically with this vision in mind. And now we're really just making a lot of really impactful moves in that space. So exciting, and alongside expanding those resources, we've been strengthening our MTSS process. I'm sure that this is something that this acronym you'll hear throughout all of the presentations, but it has been a very collaborative model. Ms. LaPerriere has been leading a lot of that work and doing an outstanding job. We've increased the number of students receiving interventions through Tier 3 and Tier 2 in general education, and so it is ultimately also like a cost savings, fiscally responsible approach. It's proactive and has been very data informed. They did a lot of work with that committee over the summer, refining systems and clarifying roles and just strengthening the alignment. And during the school year, that professional development has continued, not only among the team, but expanded with all of the teachers and staff. They have ongoing and regular business meetings with the MTSS team, and then they are just ensuring that this work continues to grow by strengthening our, and I think I'll speak to this a little bit later, strengthening our approach to reflection and data analysis as well. I spoke earlier already about our emphasized family engagement. On the bottom right is a photo of one of our students and the two of us at one of the family engagement nights. I think that like the big selling factor was that we had these like stuffies that you can see she's holding us at like a random roofing company called us and said, you know, do you want 300 stuffies? And we were like, sure, yes, of course we do. And it became like this really huge thing among the kids. So we had a really great time with that. And also just inviting to our monthly ruler assemblies community members to present on our different topics. So the photo at the top you see is community members who the mom wrote a book called A Dog and His Boy. And it was really about inclusion and disability awareness. And it was like a perfect connection to the inclusion lesson that was being taught with our ruler curriculum that month. And it was like our kids were absolutely riveted by this presentation. And we're always so proud to have 700, 8, 9, and 10-year-olds sitting collectively in a gym on the floor, like pin drop quiet, dialed in, like very focused on the content. So, and then that I also mentioned with our access to after-school clubs. I know every year it is, we've made all of these analogies about how difficult it is to like get your first choice and you have to get up early and set an alarm and sign on. And every year we do try to expand access to the clubs so that it doesn't feel like such a beach to beacon registration, Taylor Swift concert tickets, whatever you want to call it, to access clubs. It feels that way initially, but it does work out over time, and we are able to like reopen slots and those sorts of things. So every student who wants to participate is able to participate in a club. This year, I think we have the fact here, over 700 individual registrations for 38 club sessions that are offered. So really outstanding opportunities, everything from chorus to STEM to art club to chess club, floor hockey, there is some Lego, there is something for everybody. And these opportunities are made possible with thoughtful coordination and represent a really strong investment in our student engagement. So thank you for continuing to support that work. I think we can go to the final slide. So in terms of goals and priorities for Wentworth, the biggest one is expansion of our GATES programming. And so GATES is another acronym. It's our Gifted and Talented Education Services. We currently have one GATES teacher serving kindergarten through 5th grade. So one GATES teacher similar to what I spoke about with the Learning Commons, our librarian. One person serving 4 buildings, all of those students. And there's a really clear screening and identification process that takes place. And for many years, this one teacher has worked to support, like I said, 1,300 students across mathematics and ELA, as well as screening for like science, social studies, and overseeing the arts, visual and performing arts. It's just, it creates, this model has resulted in staff turnover recently since we've had a retirement because it's not sustainable. And it also results in inadequate access to GATES programming and instruction for our K-5 learners. Our bar is very high in Scarborough for access to gifted and talented programming, which speaks to the high level of skill of our general education teachers who are able to differentiate and secure resources and materials to keep our highest level learners really engaged in the work. But currently we're identifying students who meet at the 98th or 99th percentile only. oftentimes, very, very regularly, when new students move into the district, they say to us, oh, yes, and he or she was involved in GATES programming in the previous district. And we have to say, okay, we'll rescreen here, and like the criteria is a little bit different. And more often than not, though they qualified in other districts, they do not qualify and meet the criteria for GATES programming here. The criteria is truly at the ceiling, and our students are continuing to meet that ceiling criteria, as evidenced by the fact that our 5th grade math class has 22 students, I believe, currently, and Katie helped me with
Typically between 10 and 12.
10 to 12 is like the typical class size for GATES programming. Our GATES teacher has about double the caseload of colleagues at the middle school level, because at the middle school there's a teacher focused on like math, science, and humanities. So the role is split for the building. Due to realignment, though, we could meet this, we could increase access to GATES programming by adding a second GATES teacher at zero budget impact with a realignment of positions. So that's really something that we are strongly advocating for, so that our students have access to that programming that is required. I won't talk too much more about the intentional implementation of our new math curriculum. However, that thoughtful committee work ends up, whichever direction we end up moving forward, and under the assumption that we are able to work that into our budget, like that is going to be a huge goal and priority for us at Wentworth, as well as all of K-5 next year. That will take time and intentional professional development. And, that sort of goes to the very last bullet here, which, time is probably our greatest resource, and broadening that scope of professional development opportunities while K-5 teachers generally teach all subjects. It's a really heavy lift for staff, and they're incredible and extremely hardworking, but when you have like a hard emphasis on a new curriculum, that doesn't mean that we can just like forget about everything else. Like that is still continuing as well. We're going to continue the work of refining our integrated student support response systems using the multi-tiered systems of support, MTSS. That is connected to the bullet just beneath it, increasing data literacy and informed decision-making school-wide. We've partnered with the curriculum department this year and have implemented a model of data review cycles that has been very collaborative. We're in early days of this work. The scope is bigger at Wentworth just because Wentworth is a larger school than a Blue Point, Eight Corners, or Pleasant Hill. So there are some logistics and just the scope is bigger. So it's a little slower in the process, but we're really getting there. I think that we're making some nice inroads, and I think that this process will fold nicely with the work that Ms. LaPrairie has led with our MTSS improvements as well, and we can be very clear about what students need support, when, in what ways, and that will take the emphasis off from, as mentioned at K2, individual teachers, to recognize like, oh, this specific student in my specific classroom requires this support, and makes it a much more team-based approach that guarantees that we are not missing anybody. So that process has been a big lift, I would say, at Wentworth this year, and will continue for moving forward as well. I think that's
I think that's it too.
yeah.
Questions for Wentworth?
Before I let you speak, I want to say that I misled Shannon. The chart that talks about the contracting folks is just under special education, and it's cumulative. So
What page are you on?
I'm on 47. So Diane and I were just saying we'll go back to the individual building chart so it's not confusing. Like I don't want you to think that we need 17 new positions at K2. We need 6. So we'll sort that out. Maybe put another line into it, into the grid, so it's clear that there are contracted people filling those positions right now. And we did do that, again, cumulatively in the special education section. But probably should have broken it out by school as well, because otherwise you might not even get there and know what we're talking about.
And so the 3 on the Wentworth chart on page 30 are in addition to the 6, or those are folded into the 6?
There are no new positions at Wentworth. All the new positions
There are
would
only
be-
6 district-wide,
Yeah.
Got it.
right? But again, I think those are placeholders for contracted employees.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You would like to hire them, but.
Yeah,
We
the
cannot.
question is the label, right? Are they
Yeah.
employees or are they positions that we currently have?
Right.
Right. So that was what we were trying to be a little more finessey about, but I don't think we quite got there yet. We didn't do it as well as we would have liked to.
Back to Wentworth.
Back to Wentworth.
Trying to stay silent for most of this because then you're all coming back to us, but in that example, is the cost between contracted and employees
Cost is lower.
relatively?
For local employees than for contracted.
Yeah, it depends on what benefits they take,
Right.
honestly, because the contract is a flat rate. But in most cases, it's either a break even or a little bit more expensive to have the contractors. And of course, with the local control of having an actual employee, that they're more, not that our contracted service folks aren't great, but there's that benefit of having folks that are actually embedded in our programs and receiving all of our guidance.
Yeah, absolutely, our role.
Leadership.
All those positions with staff, for sure.
Great, thanks.
Okay, I derailed that, sorry, back to Wentworth.
More than a question, I just want to say I'm very impressed with the, sort of how the multi-tiered, system support really helps to feed into also the data collection and sort of your collectively, students aren't dropping through cracks, they're not relying on one educator to really see that student and their needs. I just find that really very impressive and it probably goes beyond Wentworth, but it's clear that there's sort of a holistic approach to really tracking all of your students and understanding where they are. So I know it's a lot of work, it's a heavy lift, and I just want to thank you for that, so.
Yeah, and for the benefit of the full leadership team, like we did talk about MTSS in much more detail last evening. I shared with the board that this is really one of those cornerstones of this upcoming budget, really tied into our mission statement. I shared the numbers that of all of the students at each of our phase levels that are benefiting from MTSS. So we really appreciate your acknowledgement of
Obviously,
that.
it's a lot of work to put in these, it's all kinds of new practices and new sort of tools that you have to use, and integrated into already, significant workloads, but it's impressive, and I think your students and our students are benefiting from it, so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's definitely been a district-wide effort and a district-wide area of focus. And I think it speaks to all of the successes that our students are having, right? So thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
Great. Any other questions for any of the presenters that you've heard from yet? All right, so I think what we will do is we'll take a quick 5-minute break. We have some great treats back there for all of you for some sustenance, and then we will come back together in just about 5 minutes. Thank you. segment, you'll see on the agenda, we're going to hear from special services, from the middle school, high school, and athletics and activities. So we will kick off with Chris Rohde, our
Hello.
Director of Special Services.
Chris Rohde, Director of Special Services. Just a heads up to everybody today that I have a family issue going on and I may need to step out if I get a phone call. If I do, we're going to turn it over to our Assistant Director, Nicole Benham, who will do a great job if I have to step out. So we'll start with fast facts, and we have, as you can see, a little over 17% of our current student population that receives special education services. So what that means typically is all of those students would either be receiving some part of their day, their education would be in a special education setting, and a very small number of students might just have like a consult with a special education teacher as a part of that. So in addition to that, we have 334 students, so almost 12% of our student population with Section 504 accommodation plans. And Section 504 accommodation plans are formal plans. They are only available to students that have a diagnosed disability as a starting point. And they are students who require accommodations or supports that go above and beyond what we might do for differentiation in the classroom. And I think we talked about this a little bit last year, but when you look at those two groups together, we're looking at a little over 25%, 26% of our student population that is currently identified as a student with a disability. And that is, people talk a lot about the changing nature of public school. I think that's a data point that we would look at as evidence of the complexity of some of the student needs that we work with now. We also have 86 students this year. They're identified as multilingual learners, and we have 23 different languages that those students represent. And we have 6 students currently qualifying as homeless under the McKinney-Vento Act. The McKinney-Vento Act is a federal law that provides basically school stability for students who are experiencing homelessness due to economic disruption, essentially. And so the 6 students that we have now are kids who may have been in a school, lost their housing or in an unstable housing situation, and we are supporting those students either through providing their education here in Scarborough, or if the student was in a different district, let's say Gorham, when they lost their housing, we would be working with Gorham schools to provide transportation for that student back and forth. So the goal of that program is to minimize educational disruption for kids who are homeless. So if you add all those numbers up, just a hair under 900 students who receive support through our department, and that total is just a little bit over 30%. And then we also have 64 students entering kindergarten in the fall. You'll hear a little bit more about this in a minute. That currently have IEPs through CDS. Kate, we should correct that. The 64 students, that number includes students who are in the referral process for CDS. So not necessarily all of those students will qualify. Right now we have a little over 50 students that have IEPs, and that's been a consistent number for us over the last 2 school years. We've had about 50 students entering. So that is our back to Kate. My apologies for not getting you that correction before our meeting.
That's okay. Diane's in real time here. She's wow.
Okay.
Scary.
So for our successes and accomplishments for this year, this first piece, trauma-informed special education training. So this is something that we started last year and have continued through this year. We've been very fortunate to work with Dr. Rebecca Bickford. She is both a clinical level psychologist and a board-certified behavior analyst, and has worked with a lot of different schools in Southern Maine. And she has been working with us specifically around trauma-informed special education training for this year, 39 of our staff. Last year we had a PD session set up for our K2 staff, and this year we've expanded that to K8. The primary focus of this training is to work with our social life skills programs. And those are our self-contained programs that work with students who have the most needs around, self-regulation and kind of, just being able to kind of follow the routine of school. So this training has really been great for us to provide, not just for our teachers, but also our related service providers in those programs and our ed techs. Dr. Bickford has also helped us with some individual student programs that we're working with, and she also consults to a couple of the social life skills programs on a regular basis in addition to that district-wide training that we do. We also implemented this year a new middle school reading curriculum, and this was a big step for us. It's a program called Read 180, and that program has really helped us with the introduction of evidence-based reading instruction, for kids at the middle school level. And as you've probably heard, there is a lot in the news or out in the world these days about the science of reading and making sure that we are using reading programs to catch kids up, that we are evidence-based and have like a research background to show the level of effectiveness. So at the middle school, that's been a great pilot for us this year. It's helped us as well focus on reading comprehension, because as we know, kids start to move right from learning to read to reading to learn, and this program has some great components of that. In addition to that, at the K2 level, we have instituted another reading program called RAVO. That was a pilot that we started this year. We have probably 3 or 4 different evidence-based reading programs that really focus on that basic reading skill, right, of breaking words apart, how quickly you can read words, and one size does not fit all for those students, right? And so we really need to have a variety of programs to make sure that we're meeting our federal obligation, right, for kids to make meaningful progress. And so this has been a great addition for us this year. I won't get too deep into the weeds, but it does focus specifically on orthographic processing, and that was a little bit the gap that we had, I think, coming into the current year. And then finally, you'll hear a little bit more about this in a minute as well, but we did open a 3rd functional life skills program at the K2 level this year. So we opened a program at the Pleasant Hill School. This was primarily in response to the number of kids that we have coming in at the kindergarten level that require a functional life skills program. And a functional life skills program is really designed for our students with the greatest development needs. So we're working on very basic core academic readiness skills. We're working on self-care with students. Often working on self-regulation skills, and for almost all the students in these programs, we're working on like very, very basic communication skills, right? Helping kids learn to use communication, whether it's through an augmentative communication device or a more low-tech approach, but basically being able to use language to communicate their needs and wants as opposed to behaviors, right? So these are very staff-intensive programs, and we were able to open a 3rd one at Pleasant Hill. So again, while that was in reaction to just the number of students we had and the lack of space at our current programs at Blue Point and 8 Corners, it was, I thought, nice this year to be able to offer families the option of having their student attend their neighborhood school, right? And so that's been great to integrate that program over at Pleasant Hill. All right, so that's our successes and accomplishments. So for goals and priorities for the coming year, you've heard this the last couple of years. Again, we have another large incoming kindergarten class, and one of the impacts of that has been on our ed tech staffing. So As a part of that transition from preschool to kindergarten, students with disabilities are typically receiving services through an organization called CDS. CDS writes an IEP, just like we have IEPs for kids in public school. And we have transition meetings for all those kids coming up. Those will be starting in April and running into May. And as a part of getting ready for those meetings, we review all the current IEPs for those kids in pre-K. And as of this point in time, there are currently 13 students entering that already have ed tech support on their IEPs for what they're doing in preschool through CDS. 8 of those students have one-to-one ed tech support written on their IEPs. So ed tech support can be written in a couple of different ways, right? It could be one-to-one. That means literally we need to have a support person working just with one student for the full day. And that is usually in place due to concerns around safety, whether it's elopement, putting things in their mouth, stuff like that, where you just have to have eyes on all day. Emotional regulation, behavioral regulation. So we have 8 students currently with one-to-one ed tech support. 6 of those students will be entering our functional life skills programs in the fall. And 2 will be in our social life skills program, which are, as we just talked about, designed more around kind of the emotional behavioral regulation needs. So we also have an additional 5 students that have not one-to-one ed tech support, but they have either 2-to-1 or ed tech support as needed. So they'll need some support in their general education setting, not necessarily one-to-one, but we still have to support that. So that's what's written into IEPs right now. And then kind of an unknown for us every year are kids who didn't receive any services, right, during preschool, either because they were just never identified and never picked up by CDS, or because they were found eligible, but CDS wasn't able to provide services for them. That's been an issue in Maine here for a while. So unknown, over the last couple of years, we've had an average of about 4 students that we'll identify, during the year that require ed tech support that we didn't know about on the first day of school. All right, so 2 other areas of impact with the incoming kindergarten class. The first is speech. Again, you've heard this from me the last couple of years. Of those 50 students that we have currently identified, 39 of them are currently receiving speech and language services. And when I added up the current service time, this was about a month ago when we looked at the data, it was an overall load of about 50 hours per week, which is a lot, right? And that's an increase of 11 hours per week over what we saw last year, which was already a big group for us. So if you then look at, well, how many second graders are moving on, to Wentworth, and could we reduce the impact at the K2 level? We have about 16 and a half hours per week of service. So right now, if school would start tomorrow, we would have an additional 33 hours of speech and language services spread across 3 K2 buildings above and beyond what we're doing right now. So that impacts the staffing need for us. And then occupational therapy. Again, we have an increase in the number of students in our functional life skills program. I just put a little bullet in here to try to provide some perspective on that. So right now at Wentworth, grades 3, 4, and 5, we have 2 students in our functional life skills program. And we'll have 3 in that program in the fall. This coming fall, we're going to have 19 students in our functional life skills programs in grades K1 and 2. Yeah, that's a huge increase. And that impacts not just speech, but also, occupational therapy. And when we look at the OT needs of our kids coming into kindergarten this year, you can see here we have a projected increase of a little over 22 hours a week of OT. We have about 11 hours per week of K2 moving on to Wentworth. So again, an overall increase at the K2 level of a little over 11 hours per week. And again, the functional life skills programs are the main drivers of that. Most of the students in those programs will get between 60 and 90 minutes a week of occupational therapy services, and those are things like working on self-care, buttoning, fine motor skill, sensory regulation, and those are, again, needs that most of those students will have. So, all right, so that's our goals and priorities, and I think that's my last slide, I think. Right, so, questions that you have for me?
An increase in need for OT, speech, functional life skills, do you see students sort of not graduating, but sort of getting those needs met and then requiring less of that kind of intervention or not, or is this just making that throughout their, if they remain in special services, those needs are gonna, they're just gonna be integrated into their curriculum?
Yeah.
Throughout their participation in special services?
Yeah, great question. So I would say for the students in the functional life skills programs, they're gonna have those OT services and those speech services from now, and some of those kids will be with us until they're 22.
Okay.
Right, so they're gonna have those all the way through, and we don't typically find that the intensity of those services decreases. Now, every student is different and they're all individual, and
Right,
certainly for
but the
some
trend
kids,
is,
that's the trend. What makes speech a little bit different is that a lot of those kids coming into kindergarten receiving speech services are receiving services around articulation. And for those kids, we do often see those students graduate from speech, maybe by the end of first grade or in the second grade. So we do see a drop in the speech numbers from K2 forward. Yeah.
And is that something that might be met by having a pre-K where you could sort of, there's preparation for, would that possibly, reduce the need for speech therapy or not?
Yeah.
It's hard, I know I ask you to speculate, so.
Yeah. No, great question again, right? So I do think once we pick up the 3 and 4-year-old special education services, right, our current plan is to look at the 27-28 school year for doing that, then I do think we will be getting kids, obviously we'll be getting them earlier. I think we'll be better positioned to provide those services because there are a lot of kids, not a lot, but there's a significant number of kids who qualify for speech, and they are able to find a lot, right? So if we're getting them as a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, a lot of them we may be able to make enough progress that they don't need services, right? So that would certainly be a hope.
So we can maybe hope to, early intervention might allow us to scale back on the needs later on.
Exactly.
I mean, that's always the goal of early intervention, right? And I think the other piece, if we want to think about what is the benefit of us taking on CDS responsibilities, I think,
Apart from the headache.
I'm smiling because Chris is probably like, why is she saying that there's benefits? Because it's extra responsibility. But I think the benefit of that is that we are writing those initial IEPs and starting that work from the ground up versus an outside entity who's written a plan and, pressed play on that plan, et cetera, right? And so right now, when our kids come to kindergarten, there's work that has to be done in terms of looking at how did another entity write the IEP, how are those services like or not like how we do things at Scarborough Public Schools. And so, if nothing else, there'll be a little bit more streamlining, correct?
Oh, I think so, and I think the other big benefit for us is going to be, as we talked about with the training with Dr. Bickford, we spent a lot of time over the last couple of years thinking about our, evidence-based programming for students with those emotional regulation needs, particularly at the K2 level, right? So making sure that we have a kind of a uniform practice across our 3 different programs, or 2 different programs at 8 Corners and Blue Point. But again, an evidence-based program that has an effect size, right? We can look at this and say that there's been studies, people have looked at this, these programs are effective in helping kids regulate themselves in a school setting. And being able to implement that curriculum and that programming with students earlier at age 3 or age 4, I think will also, potentially have a benefit on those needs. And that's a growing need, right? You'll hear that everywhere. And so I think that's another real benefit of us taking that
This helps us get ready for, this puts the pieces, starts to put the pieces in place to assume that responsibility being handed off to us from CPS.
Right.
That's right.
And that's what we're trying to be really thoughtful about. Excellent.
You said there are 19 kids in the K-2 in the functional life skills, and all of those kids will likely go on to Wentworth, and wow, so that's up 17.
Right.
Yeah, that'll be,
It's the past couple of years of the 3 years now of those incoming numbers
Yeah.
being really high.
Yeah.
And they gotta go on up.
yeah, for sure, and this is totally anecdotal, not fact-based, but I have spoken with a couple of other special education directors in the area, and they are seeing like similar increases in the number of students that need this level of support. And one of them described it as like a public health crisis. I mean, these are, there's some students, some disability categories that, we might look at and think, well, maybe the numbers have increased a little bit because we think differently about that type of disability. The diagnostic criteria looks a little bit different. I mean, these are students that have, really significant needs. Anybody would, walk into a school and understand that they're getting some programming that's different from other kids. And so I don't have any idea, what's causing that. And it's very difficult to predict what next year will look like, right? And could it look like this year again? It could go back to what we had 5 or 6 years ago, which would be maybe a couple of kids coming in a typical fall. So.
Yeah, and as further evidence of that, right, this whole conversation that's been happening in legislature about EPS funding, there is a component of that is directly related to special education, which they haven't fleshed out yet. But, what they are looking to do is hold the line on state costs for special education. But that doesn't assume that those needs disappear, right? And so that's the flawed thinking around that, right? Because I can appreciate from a state level, they want to hold spending. But if we still have students who have needs, and that's what I'm hearing from all of my colleagues across the state, it's one thing for the state to say, we have to stop spending more money on special education. But if the students in front of you have a greater level of need than we've ever seen before, those two things don't integrate well together.
Or you don't get to tell the kid they can't come to school because we met our maximum from the state,
Right.
our allowance.
Or
Right.
you're not gonna receive the services that they're required to by
Right.
law.
Right, and that's the part of it, right? It's not just providing a service, right? The federal law that governs this requires us to provide services that allow students to make, adequate progress given their kind of unique circumstances, right? And so, like when I talked about the reading programs earlier, I can't just roll out one reading program for everybody and say, hey, here we go, we have a special education reading program. Go at it, right? Like I have to be able to demonstrate that program is allowing that student to make progress. So to go to Diane's point, to just say, okay, well, this is how much you should spend, and there shouldn't be more. That's not how the federal law works.
Right.
It's not how educated kids works either.
Programs that are effective. And that's what makes special education different from a lot of other things we do in school.
Is it right that we have to serve those kids, we're required to serve those kids regardless of what we do with the pre-K program?
Yes.
Yes.
If we decide we're not gonna expand it past this pilot program, we would still have an obligation to.
Yeah,
those
our
needs are
obligation
required.
under special education will begin with 3 and 4-year-olds most definitively by July 1, 2028, right? And so even if we don't build in-house programming for general pre-K, we will still be on the hook for all of those special education services and that FAPE requirement that you heard me speak about last night, which is either 6 hours or 10 hours if you are 3 or 4 of time with general education peers. And so if we have no public pre-K programs here, then that means that we need to send dollars to some, develop public-private partnerships with the community and send dollars to those providers to pay for those general ed hours.
They have to be in a program.
Right.
Right, so we're gonna have to, if we don't provide it in-house, we have to pay someone else to do it.
Right, like what we have with Shooting Stars, similar.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it's likely to be both too, because
Yes.
with the numbers that we're looking at,
That's why we're looking at a hybrid approach,
Well,
right?
and it's a little bit of an extra incentive to develop the pre-K program.
Exactly.
Because you build it in.
exactly.
That's a little bit of a these things.
And there's no, like to Jillian's point about the increase in students this year, when if we understand that their needs are such that where they're going to require support through potentially age 22, as they move on to Wentworth, there's no expectation that that OT can just move with them because we don't know what's coming behind. So we might have 19 here in K3 and only 3 in Wentworth, but as those 19 move to Wentworth, we don't know what's going to be at the K2.
And it also doesn't account for any move-ins,
Right.
right? Which people register every day.
Right.
Other questions for me?
Okay, I know you're, do you have one? Go.
No.
Yes, you go. Mine is, Kate's I'm gonna ask her to walk you through the chart like a 2-year-old, so you go.
I'll get the chart.
You look at number 47 and you ask your question.
Go ahead, seriously.
No, shoot, sorry. Go.
Somebody ask a question.
Can you help me understand page 47 of the chart?
So this is the place where we were trying to break out that I was erroneously attributing to the K2 chart, which I didn't do.
Yeah.
There's 2 lines for ed techs on this chart. The line that says FY26, an FY26 column that says that we have 81.64 ed techs, those are employees. And under that, there's 18 positions, 15 of which are filled with contracted services people today, 3 of which are open. So when you go to next year, the change for FY27, you're adding 24. You're adding the 18 positions that are currently in our level services budget plus 6 new ones. So that's where the math makes at least some degree of sense. And it will make a lot more sense if I go back and put them into the individual buildings where those positions are currently filled. And just to the point of all of these sort of annotations that we're doing, both on the slide deck and the budget book as we go along, we'll make sure before we post them that we're putting the sort of fixed up versions, edited versions, so that people are, I mean, the clarifying questions are really helpful, and we want to make sure we're putting up what people can understand who aren't sitting at the table.
And what's the .35 director assistant?
That is a shift from the local entitlement IDEA grant, which is a federal grant that we get for special education. And we did talk a little bit last night. There's a chart in the intro piece about the sort of uncertainty around federal grants and the guidance we've received from Department of Ed saying get the people out of there and put stuff in there. So the .35 addition, our current assistant director is funded 75% in the grant and 25% local. And we're proposing to push it to 50% in the grant, 50% local. We're trying to do this in stages. But the good news about the grant is that now we can turn around and put the same value of contracted services back into local entitlement, because we're not so much concerned about the loss of the grant itself yet, knock on something, but we are concerned about the use of those funds. So there's a net zero impact to the budget in that, but in terms of the way it's broken out here, grant funded staff versus locally funded, that's the change that you see. So you see that minus 2.45 in grant funded staff, and then that same add is under the specialists and the specialists, the teachers, and the director, assistant director. So again, net zero add in terms of the budget, but different category of funding in terms of human beings versus stuff. So what we did, to make it a simple statement, what we did with special education was we took human beings who were in the grant and services that were not, specifically tuition for out-of-district placement. We took the same value and swapped it. So in the grant application for next year, and again, this is on the recommendation of the Department of Ed, go ahead and put your tuition in the grant and your human beings in your local budget. There is a chart up on page 14 that shows you the shift in the FTEs that are in different places right now.
Mhm.
That would actually be a good thing to reference.
Feeling okay to move forward?
I just wanted to make one comment. It's not about this year's budget. I just see this as a real driver in the future for future budgets. Like it's just gonna keep climbing. The requirements are gonna they're gonna keep passing on mandated requirements at the state, federal level, and without the resources, or capping those resources and not the differences. So that's just, I'm just saying that out loud as a challenge.
Yeah, and that's why.
I'm telling you that you already know, but I just wanted to voice that, so.
And that's why we have to continue with our advocacy, right? Because I think that there, as you heard directly, because you were with me on Monday.
Right.
I think that there are others in the field that are making some misnomers in terms of, special education needs and costs are attributed to your poverty rate, when that is absolutely not fact.
And I think it's important too, and then we'll be able to move on to, except unless Joanne has a question. It's important to also call things what they are and stop with the 100% financing and so that's why I know it sounds silly, but that's why I keep saying, is it new money? Is it existing money? Because I think it's important for everybody to have a full understanding that not everything is 100% financed, even though it appears so on the surface when we get mandates from the state.
Correct. Fair statement. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to move on to the middle school and talk about some successes and accomplishments, try to move to a more positive back trajectory here. So, Kathy.
Thank you. You're definitely going to hear some of the same themes that you have heard. As Wentworth, we are very excited that every year our number of checkouts, both the print and the digital, increases a little bit. And our librarian does put in a lot of work behind the scenes of looking at the collection, looking at which books are very popular, which books students aren't checking out as much, and works on building that collection based on student interests. We are very proud of our state science data, and with that assessment, only 8th graders at the middle school take the science. It's also taken at 5th grade and 11th grade. But at 76% of our 8th graders performing at or above the state expectations compared to the 47 at the state. We have had other schools reach out to us before to come in for visits or to ask us, what are you doing? And then as Katie gave some statistics on the spring 2025 Maine through year assessment, 82% of our students scored at or above in reading, and then the 62.3 in mathematics. And that is data that we're given much more than just this percent. We're given it data by student, but also data as a grade level. And so I'll kind of talk about it here, but one of the things we are doing as the other schools is we're really looking at data, individual student and our whole school. So this is data that our instructional coaches and curriculum department help our teachers dig into to look at which standards our students are very strong in and which standards we could work on. And one example of that is in reading, the standards around some nonfiction reading were standards identified for our teachers to work on. So they have worked on building units around nonfiction. So that's kind of just one example of how we use this data. And then same themes as Wentworth for the panorama. Two of our highest were in the supported relationships and then the self-management. Self-management was the area that we grew the most in. And again, it's like, okay, that connection to ruler and ruler, giving kids the skills to say, okay, this is how I'm feeling, and this is a strategy I could use to help me manage my emotions. And then Mike will speak to this a bit more, but we continue to have so many of our students participate in athletics and our clubs and activities. I think course has been a theme the last few years. When we started, we were one of the only schools in southern Maine that did not have a course program during the school year. We were fortunate enough to have the high school chorus teacher come down and teach our eighth grade class. Our first class had 17 students. The next year our numbers went down a bit. I believe it was kind of around the COVID time. 2 years ago, we had 40 students. Last year, 100, and now we're at 129. It is a challenge for us with that many students and a .25 course teacher, and I'll speak more to that in a bit. Just like Wentworth, we're in our third year of our ruler implementation, second year with students. It was so important that first year our staff had the PD. So they went into the last year implementing the lessons with students, feeling really confident about their knowledge. And I think that kind of speaks to what we're going to be doing with mathematics. That PD also helps teachers feel confident and excited about implementing the new curriculum. Our themes though in middle school, so we have this year that teachers, the crew teachers, are implementing the grade level lessons, and the units are community, safety and climate, emotions matter, self and social awareness, and then emotional regulation and personal values. Our climate education grant, another exciting thing, it's really building on the year before. We had the Molly grant, the Maine Outdoor Learning grant, this year climate education grant. So our team partnered with the Maine Tree Foundation and received the learning grant from the Maine DOE. It really provided a lot of professional development time and resources for teachers. The teachers have been working in teams to develop lessons, and I want to give you some examples of the lessons that have been developed. So, expanding the invasive species unit in the 6th grade, continued development of the integrated program in the 7th grade, expanding our garden spaces and how we use them for academic and social and emotional needs, Indigenous Studies unit that focuses on the impact of logging on our local rivers, connected Wabanaki culture to literature in the 6th grade, an ecology unit in the 8th grade, and the development of a 7th grade unit on pollinators and their impact on essential Maine industries. And through this work, we have partnered with a lot of outside organizations also. And it's funny, I've wanted them all on one piece of paper, and Jen and I and our instructional coaches, we've just started to list all of our organizations, which is pretty impressive. So now there's been a shift in let's look at the middle school campus, and we've talked about developing an outdoor learning space, but then we want to have it in place for the fall of next year. So we actually have some staff who are after school going to go visit Saco Middle School and the Falmouth School to look at their outdoor learning spaces. So there's still money in this climate grant to help make that happen. then, let's see, during our Rise Enrichment, we've been partnering with a nonprofit organization, Passion for Life. And during our Rise Enrichment block, we've been able to bring in many volunteers who have helped kids to explore paddleboarding, skiing, rock climbing, orienteering, mountain biking, surfing, and ice fishing. And we're getting very close now with the snow melting to be able to actually go put our trail cams in the woods. So we're looking forward to that. Okay, goals and priorities. So we are asking for an increase in our chorus teacher to, he's a 0.25 this year and increase it to a 0.50. One of the things is right now class sizes are so large, if the cafeteria is being used or the band or music, can't really put 50 students into one of our classrooms for 25 students. Would really like to get that class size at 25. And that also allows the teacher to get more direct instruction and individuals' attention to the students during a class. And then also it will really help to support the performance, preparation, and participation in our school and community events. So, and it'll make scheduling a little bit more flexible, really getting, to be able to support students. And we're really anticipating probably next year having 150 students interested because our 34 students will be going to the high school. And having this program is also increasing the high school numbers of students in chorus.
Yeah, that's been really successful after COVID, right?
Yeah.
When the
Then
performing arts went.
Yeah, and with the new building, there'll be a chorus classroom, which we're really excited for that. And then with our math curriculum, I know Katie has spoken to this. That's going to be a big priority next year, that implementation of the math curriculum. And I do also want to add, besides the professional development, having our instructional coaches be able to also support and co-teach and model, and with the implementation is going to be really important. Attendance, I think we are always working on improving our student attendance and decreasing that chronic absenteeism. In the year 23-24, at the end of the year, this was February data, we were at 15% chronic absenteeism. Last year we were at 11, and then when I checked mid-February, we were at 11.7. So our goal is to be under 10%. Before COVID, we were at about 6%. So this is an ongoing focus. We meet once a month to look at our attendance data. I look at it at least weekly on the students that we individually target to give them support, have support meetings. This is one of our data points for MTSS. And kind of jumping now to MTSS, we meet on a 4-day rotation to talk about our academic MTSS. And then we also meet once in a 4-day rotation to talk about our social, emotional, and behavioral MTSS. And one thing I do want to add, and I know I can speak for the other schools, is in the meetings when we're talking about an individual student and determining the supports that they could benefit from based on the data, we are so fortunate to have the tier 2 and tier 3 positions that we do have. A math interventionist, our math support teacher, our literary support teacher, and academic center that focuses and helps students with executive functioning, and our bridge teacher who can support students who are out for extended time because of medical reasons. They've been homeschooled and need to learn our math and focus curriculum, and we need to just give them a little bit more support. The students who are school avoiders and they've missed some school, being able to support them. So I can't speak enough to the supports that we have. And that's what makes our MTSS system possible, and that we're really, I feel, very successful.
Questions for the middle school?
I just wanted to say, well, first I had a great tour with you personally, but just look out for Scarborough Living. We as a board did an article for that focuses on the course, both at the high school and at the middle school level. And what a phenomenal growth in that program and the two teachers. So it's just wonderful. Just wanted to say just how great those two educators are and how passionate they are, the kind of passion that they've brought to work for the vocal arts in Scarborough. So.
Well, I hate to follow that with my questions. The math was an area of concern, the math test results was an area of concern for the board. And so I'm not sure, maybe both of you, but with the curriculum review for math, was there deficiencies that were maybe identified in math and focus that is helping to inform decisions made now, so that perhaps we see an increase in improvement on that math test?
Well, I do know with the math and focus, the standards alignment between the math and focus and the grade level math standards are not fully aligned. So there might be, I'm thinking circumference of a circle being a standard that was taught later. And I know that there are some others. Katie, I don't know if you know specifically.
When we think about the through-year assessment, that assessment is built on grade level standards. And the performance that we expect to see on the through-year results is in relationship to criterion-based measures, which is the grade level standards. Currently, our Math and Focus program does not meet the alignment of standards. And if you were to look up Math and Focus on Ed Reports, which is an independent review site that looks at curriculums, you would see that it is rated across the board as does not meet because of that lack of coherence and relevance to the grade level standards. When we're talking about what our expectations are for students at a grade level, it's really important that that progression of skills from kindergarten to 12th grade has consistency and coherence, so that the skills we're teaching from one grade level to the next are in alignment and are buildable skills. As we know, addition and subtraction lead to success in multiplication and division, and then into fractions, decimals, percents, and so on. And if we are out of alignment with that at grade level, that shows on the assessment. And I think that's part of what we're seeing, is that our instructional materials do not meet the grade level expectations of either main learning results or National Common Core state standards. So while it may be, or it was, 10, 12 years ago, a highly rated program, it has not kept up in terms of the standards alignment that our national organizations and our curriculums nationally now align to. So I think there's an element of that there.
Okay, so that to me then makes this rise to the top for priority.
Yes, it's a critical need, right?
This no longer is like this would be a good to have, this to me would be it's a requirement. Is that fair?
Yeah,
I certainly look at it.
Yeah, if we expect our students to be successful on assessments and demonstrate that they know grade level standards, we need to make sure that the programs and materials that we're using address those standards specifically, right? We can't just leave it up to happen chance.
Yes, yes. So the expectation if this is approved in this next budget, you would purchase these supplies and be able to provide the PD for the teachers for the next school year, or would it be the year after?
This coming school year.
This coming school year that we would be able to change confidently.
And keep in mind that implementation would take a couple of years for us to see the full fruition of that program to be developed. But the longer we wait, the longer it will take to see any changes in our students.
Sure, those numbers will continue to decline, we can assume.
Right.
Because we're continuing to not meet standards. Okay. And then with attendance and the chronic absenteeism, I imagine that also plays a hard part. So we're already kind of hamstrung by our curriculum and now we're not in school, right? That's an added second piece. Is there any work with, when you're working with accommodations and support in trying to address this, is there any work done to give them materials to do at home perhaps? Are we shying away from that because we really want them to be in school? Like how do we make sure that they're caught up, that they're,
They have to be present to receive the instruction, right?
Yeah.
Like this is not a correspondence course.
Right, like how do you make sure that they're
Yeah, I mean, students, we
Not falling
do use
behind.
Google Classroom. So students can access Google Classroom to see what the assignments are and what's going on. They are not, though, getting that direct
Right.
instruction.
Yeah.
So this is a student where we might be talking about them at MTSS, and we would say, let's have our bridge teacher give them additional support in mathematics or in reading.
Actually, like during rides or
Or
whenever
just
they're
during
part of
the
their
school
academic
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those students that are consistently chronically absent, where like bridge and academic support during the school day aren't meeting their needs and we're not seeing growth, those students are coming through the special education side of things and going through eligibility to look at a potential emotional disability or medical need that needs additional supports. And so similar to reading and math with the MTSS system, there's also a system of supports for students who are chronically absent. And we do have some students who are receiving special education services to work through some of that school avoidance that they're showing.
Yeah, and working very closely with families.
Okay, that's good. That was gonna be my next question.
Yeah.
Because I understand this is a rolling number, if I remember correctly, the number of days, because it's that 10% of school days, so it rolls as a year.
Yes.
But it's worrisome to me that we're in February and we're already higher than we were last year for the full year.
And that's not
Is that
necessarily just like pertinent to the middle school. Like I wanna make sure, like I know that you're asking Kathy these questions.
Yes.
All of
but
our
it's all
schools
of
are
them.
working on addressing chronic absenteeism because we are seeing
You're seeing it across
similar
the board.
rates across the board.
And then Shannon, it can change, I mean, you look at that percent, but and each time looking at the data, there are so many students right at 10. So if they are absent, if they're not absent for so many days, they're gonna come right off of it. So I think, we have a bigger percent at just 10%, where they're so close to not being considered chronically absent.
It's that chronic absenteeism, the way the state has told us to figure it is, it's 10% of the current student days. So
Right.
like, if we ran it September 15th, any kid that has missed 2 days
Would be
is chronically
chronically
absent.
absent,
But
right.
again, if they come the entire next month, they're no longer chronically absent.
Right.
So that number, as Kathy said, it's 11.7%. The hope is that, as more school days come, they're working on plans and that number does drop below.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not just adding to it.
Oh, I see, yeah, okay. I see
It
what you're
can move either way.
It's a
That
moving
number is
Yeah,
a
it's
fluid
moving,
number.
yeah, the date's a moving target, but also the kids are a moving target.
Because what we're dividing
Right.
by, the number of school days, is changing every day.
Right, yeah, thank you, that's helpful.
All right, we have about 20 minutes left, and so I really want to make sure that we are spending enough time for you to hear from the high school.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning, Nate.
So we'll try to move quickly
so we save time
You're
for
fine.
athletics and activities as well. Fast facts at the high school, I wouldn't
He has
wanna-
about 20 slides, I
I wouldn't
know.
want to shortchange athletics and activities.
He's got an hour-long presentation teed up.
So anyways, in terms of fast facts, I wanted to share just some range of data, I think, with the board, just to kind of give you some insight in terms of how our year's been going. One of the things I think in terms of culture and climate that's kind of exciting, like everybody else, we administered the Panorama Survey, it was in January. I think relationships was a really positive theme throughout the district, and I think that rang true at the high school too. One of the things I thought that was kind of interesting too, though, was we made some gains in the topic of social awareness. And in terms of some of the data points within that topic, things like kids are reporting that they're listening more carefully to other people's opinions, respecting people with different opinions, disagreeing with others without starting an argument. Those skills, I think, are really worth highlighting. 3% gain, it's not 10, but it's not nothing either. And I think those are really, really critical skills worth highlighting. And we saw a little bit of growth in that category overall, and then also in a number of specific questions within that category. To me, those are really vital skills that I think we need a little bit more of these days. So it's cool to see some kids making some gains in that area. So that was something I wanted to highlight in addition to highlighting the continued strength of relationships at the high school. Students are reporting that they've got supportive relationships with peers, adults, and school staff in their lives, which I think is really, really important. We all know being a teenager can be tough. It's easy to withdraw. But 88% of our students are reporting that reporting favorably that they've got strong relationships in their lives, which I think is a really important protective factor, and also just a good data point for us to be aware of. Academically, in terms of what I wanted to highlight here, we've got there are a couple things really. I think one of the big themes at the high school is, we graduate students. They need 22 credits to graduate. We're always looking for ways to maintain pathways that can appeal to the different interests, needs, post-secondary goals of our students. And I think we continue to do that in a number of ways. I'll talk a little bit about it on the next slide, but a couple of things I wanted to highlight here, just in terms of the scope of programming. We had kids request over 8,000 courses last spring. So every year we run through the course registration process. Every student, grades 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 make their course requests. We had over 8,000 requests last year, which was a 4-year high for us. We haven't seen a number that big. The interesting thing there is our enrollment is, we're down from sort of like 950 to closer to 900, but our kids are still requesting a lot of courses. And so that's sort of an interesting dynamic there. The other thing I wanted to highlight, we continue to maintain a high level of honors and advanced placement programming. We've got 21 advanced placement courses. Those are courses that students, they're aligned with a 100 level introductory college course. They take those courses, they take an exam at the end of the year. If they score a 3 out of 5 or better, they could then be eligible, depending on the college to which they go to, for college credit there. So not only is it indicative of rigorous programming, but it's also a post-secondary pathway as well, which I think is great. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is a data piece in terms of our academics. We had, I think about 150 or so students take the SAT last year. It's not something we require. But we have a number of students that take it every year. It's mostly juniors, and then sometimes we have some seniors that get counted into that. But our students are performing really well on that exam, which I think is really, really good. They're well above the main average, they're well above the national average, they're well above the global average, which I think is a really good benchmark and exciting for us to see. It means we're creating post-secondary pathways, college, university, or any other thing that they might choose. I think the SAT, sort of an interesting exam. I think it's kind of coming back in terms of the weight that it's being given. It went away for a while. They've done a lot of work on the exam. I think it's starting to be looked at again as maybe a possible strong measure or strong indicator of students' academic ability. And so it's good to see as it's starting to make a comeback that our students are performing really well on that exam.
In terms of post-secondary placements, I wanted to highlight that we had a really high graduation rate last year. We're pretty consistently above 90%, but lately we've been 92, 93, 94. Last year we were at 97, which is awesome. Might not sound like much, but every kid matters in that count. So 97% is an outstanding number. We're about 8% higher than the state average in that regard, which is great. State average is around 88, 89% these days, depending on the year. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight in terms of our graduating class, pretty consistently around 90% of our students are going to 2- and 4-year colleges or universities. And then we have another 10% of students that are pursuing military or technical certificates. Our senior placement office works diligently to work with students to develop post-secondary goals and make sure that they have some momentum on pursuit of those plans and the development of those plans before exiting high school. So it's really exciting to hear almost every kid's leaving high school with a plan. That's sort of the first step, I think, to experiencing success in post-secondary life. Next slide. So successes and accomplishments. You'll hear a lot of themes here that you've heard already. Attendance and truancy, like Kathy mentioned about the middle school. I think our rates are fairly consistent with what we saw last year. It is there's 2 rates there. One's the truancy rate, which is 1%, which I think is outstanding. And then the chronic absenteeism rate, those are excused absences. At the high school level, there's a number of things that factor into that. Planned absences continue to be something that we see a high number of. College visits factor into that. Mono, other sicknesses and ailments. It was particularly bad flu season, I would say, this year. I'm sure other people would echo that as well. It felt like we just had a lot of students that were out. Students who we've had hospitalizations, things of that sort. All of that factors into that. And so 15%, while it might feel high on the face of it, which I can appreciate, it's also well below the state average, which is trending around 23, 24, 25%, depending on the year. So the fact that we're well under that average, I think, is something to celebrate, while also wanting to bring it down at the same time. I think both things can be true. In terms of our academic accomplishments, I wanted to just highlight a couple of things again, going back to that theme of multiple pathways. We're always looking to find a way to connect a kid to a post-secondary goal or opportunity. That's such a huge driver, I think, in terms of high school success for students. So just in terms of a couple of pathways there, so we administered over 700 AP exams, which is about 30 exams more than the previous year. And students achieved an average score of 3.6 across those exams. Just as a point of reference, like 2.8 to about 3.1 is typically the average on for any one course. And so the fact that across 700 exams, students are averaging a 3.6 means our AP curriculum is very well designed and that it's being taught really successfully, really effectively, which is great to see. The other thing I wanted to highlight about that program is we did receive distinction. We did receive some recognition, I guess I would say, for that programming, which I thought was really cool. We got the Honor Roll Gold Distinction. The College Board started doing this a couple years ago to evaluate the overall health. I would say there's specific metrics that they use in order to communicate that out. We were one of 1,200 schools-ish across the United States and Canada to get the gold distinction, which I think is really cool. And it just means that we're doing a lot to bring that programming to kids and to get kids into that program. And the other thing I thought worth noting here, we also received the AP Access Award, which we hadn't received before. That basically says that the high school is doing a really good job of not only educating kids who are at the top in terms of achievement and ability, but also lower incomes and underrepresented kids, which I think is awesome. So I think all of that is a strong indication of the health of our AP program, and kudos to the teachers and the kids who are signing up for those courses. Another pathway I wanted to highlight, we also had, this is 24-25, a little bit of lag in our numbers since we haven't completed the current year. But we had 78 students take 106 college classes, so those are dual enrollment classes. That's a really big number for us. We've been lower than that traditionally, and I think the state is starting to regulate some of that. It used to be kids could pretty much take any number of courses that they want, and there were these sort of matriculation agreements between high schools and colleges. The state's cutting back on that a little bit, but we still have a lot of kids taking, basically taking college classes, sitting in college classrooms with college instructors, with the college syllabus, taking college classes and being successful there. It's different than an AP experience. It's not the exact same kind of course, but at the same time, it can be a really good experience for a lot of kids. So we had 78 students take 106 college classes last year, which I think is awesome. And those are often credits that can just directly translate. There's not this issue of AP, did you get a 2, did you get a 3, does that college only take 4 or higher on the exam? That's going to transfer with them, especially if they're just taking sort of a general core curriculum college course, like a US history course or an English course or something like that. But those are classes that, again, generate a college transcript, but we take the credit back at the high school and count it towards graduation as well. And then the other thing I wanted to just highlight too is we also had 23 members of the class of 2025 who graduated last year. We had 23 students take complete programming at Westbrook Regional Voc, Portland Arts and Technology High School, and those kids earned 88 industry certifications and 88 dual enrollment credits. So it's not the case where it's just certain types of kids that are earning college credits. We've got programming all over the place that's helping to pave the pathway for these kids to pursue further education. So I think that's really exciting. That's not anything I can fully take credit for. Pass and Westbrook do a lot of work with SMCC and other schools within the community college to try to create opportunities for kids. But the 88 industry certification, 88 dual enrollment credits is nothing to sneeze at. So that's really exciting for those kids. The other thing I wanted to highlight that's probably a little bit different than the other schools, our big project this year has been our work on accreditation. It's something that has been front and center all year long. We've been working on it throughout the year. During PLTs, the whole staff has been engaged in this. And it's a huge undertaking. We're trying to pull together the self-reflection report now. It's going to run anywhere from probably like 70 to 90 pages when it's all done. And it's a top to bottom 360-degree look in the mirror of what we're doing and how well we're doing it in the light of NEAS standards. New England Association of Schools and Colleges is the organization we work with, or NEAS. It's a really, really, I think, good organization. It's been a really positive experience for us, but we're just starting to wrap it up. But that's been a huge project. We had actually had a couple other things that we had planned for this year. If we can go to the next slide, right? That we had to sort of table just because of the crisis we had to deal with at the start of the year. And NEAS is just big. It's a lot of work. So in terms of our goals and priorities, one of the outcomes of NEAS is that we've got to identify priority areas. We've gone through, we've looked at the school, when I say we, it's really involved staff. They're working in committees of about 20 to 25, and they're really taking a look at certain areas, anything from learning supports, learning resources, learning culture, all these kinds of things. And it's a self-assessment in terms of how you're doing. One of the outcomes of the NEAS report is that we've got a small group of people who are kind of leading this work, call them the steering committee. That group is going to take everything we got from staff and identify priority areas. And we've got until March of 2028 when we host our accreditation visiting team to show that we've made some growth in these priority areas that we identified. So the way the process works is a little bit different than what it used to be. You get sort of this check to see how you're doing, and then when they come for the big show, they want to see that you've closed the gap on areas that you said you were working on. I think the thing that's really nice for us, again, the report's not done, but I think what we're seeing is actually consistent with some of the other priorities within the district, which I think is great. I think just to give you a preview of that, in a lot of ways, the high school, sort of the meeting the standard, I guess I would use that language, or implementing the standard, we're doing that in a lot of ways. There's about 10, maybe 8 to 10 or 12 areas where we've identified, it's like, now we're falling a little short there. Some of it's on curriculum, some of it's on assessment, some of it's on database, and it's not a question where we're not doing things. One of the dividing lines for NEAS is how widespread is it? Is it in pockets? Like these classrooms or these teachers or these departments, or is it across the board? And so that's an area where we've identified some areas there where it's like, this is happening, but we need to globalize it a little bit. And so we've identified some things that I think are gonna fit really nicely in with the MTSS initiative that the district has been working on. I think it's gonna fit really well with some of the SEL stuff potentially. And so I think there's gonna be some nice synergy between what this report produces in terms of outcomes, what we're supposed to be working on anyways, and where we're headed. I think they'll all kind of come together. Right now it feels a little jumbled. I think if you're at the high school staff, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this, but I think it's gonna come together really nicely starting next year, which is great. In terms of MTSS, so to move along through this, that's a very broad goal that I have up there. Again, I didn't listen to last night, but MTSS is sort of a broad, it's all the things. And as a high school, I think we're always working on some part of all the things. It's difficult to work at all the things at all the time. But like I said, I think data is probably gonna be the thing that if we had to drill down within MTSS for next year, if I was predicting where it headed, I think data and use of data and reading data, I think is gonna be something that is an outcome of the NEAS report and is gonna tuck in really nicely into the MTSS goal for next year. The SEL stuff that's on that slide, that's actually stuff that we had last year. That was work that we just had to table. It was work we had prioritized for the summer and a little bit into the year. I think you all know what the start of our year was like. And so we just kind of made an executive decision to say we can get to that. I'll get to that another time. One of the nice things that I think that's going to actually help us in a way, there's been a lot of productive talk and constructive talk, I think, in our NEAS committees around advisory specifically. We've got something here, how do we refine it? And so I think in a way, the work we've been doing with NEAS is actually going to enhance the work that we're going to be doing with advisory. I feel like we're more ready for it. We were ready for it last year, but we're more ready for it now. There's a lot of people talking about what if it was this, what about this? This is a skill that we're seeing. How about we teach kids how to write nice emails to teachers, right? These kinds of things, which seem small, but that's a professional skill. How do you write an email that isn't all lowercase letters, no punctuation, that comes in at 12:30 in the morning. Maybe think about that before you write the email. So we've identified some, a range of skills that I think we could work on, and I think advisory is a good place to work on that. It's not that you need, a 2-year curriculum on how to write an email, but maybe some 30 minutes. Here are some pointers on some things you can do. And so I think it's a cool opportunity, and I think we're well positioned to kind of tackle that project summer into next year. So that's exciting. I think that's it. Yeah. Any questions for the high school?
What do you attribute the jump in the graduation rate? Was it just a blip, or do you think just things you guys are doing?
I think
you're actually getting through paths, through others, you're catching people who might have left.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think 100% is a hard number to reach, but I think we got a report last year from the state and did some work last year with the state that highlighted some areas where we were just missing in terms of some of our subgroups in terms of graduation rate. Now the number always ebbs and flows a little bit. Sometimes you have a group where it's like it just doesn't feel like it's going to happen. But I do think we worked really, really hard. We worked a lot of our support processes really, really hard. We worked really, really hard with attendance. I think we revamped some of what we did last year around tracking seniors. I think we started tracking them a lot earlier than we were. I think we started having conversations with parents a lot earlier than we did. I would credit Sarah Blaisdell, who had to step out with a lot of that work. She had the senior class last year, and she was starting way earlier in that than we ever started before. Not that it's something we just guess and check on, but we started those conversations very early in response to some of the work or some of the data we got back from the state. We really went through, pared down, all right, this was a list that the state says we're struggling with. Who's on that list for this class? What do we need to do? I think we're very, very intentional about that. I think sustaining that is going to be one of our goals. We have to figure out that process. But I think overall, when we connect kids to the right programming, that's at least half the battle. When we connect kids, when we have a vote program that works for a kid and they start going junior year, game changer, right? When kids start experiencing something in career pathways that sort of connects them to a great learning opportunity that's relevant to them, game changer. Even AP courses, right? A kid sometimes, I mean, kids, AP Psych is probably our most enrolled class at the high school. There's like 100 kids that sign up for it every year. And it's not that all of them are gonna go get doctorates in psychology, it's just a course that's interesting. And that connects them, right? For 90 or for 75 minutes of that course, they're locked in, right? And they're not noticing what's going on around them, and that gets reflected elsewhere. When we meet a need for 75 minutes or for an hour, for 2 hours or 3 hours of their day, even if we can't meet it for the full school day, they can usually work with us. Kids who go to VOC, I think, and it works for them, it's great. They come back, they go there, they get their needs met, their learning needs met, they come back to us, and they're regulated, right? We haven't put them through a lot of classes that they're maybe not, where they're gonna be successful for them. So it's really cool to see.
Do you have any rationale or understanding as to why the course load increased?
It's just the way it goes some years. I mean, kids are required, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors are required to take 6 credits. That doesn't correlate directly with classes because some classes count for more than 1 credit, but some years there's just a lot of kids that want to take 7 or 8. That's probably the driver here. I mean, it's certainly not the case where our numbers are up, but because there's some wiggle room in terms of how many credits they take. The other wild card in there is seniors. We have some seniors where, you know, if you're on track for graduation, Senior Pris is a popular program at the high school where they can, you know, they don't have to be on campus for their study halls. For some kids, they try as many study halls as will allow. For other classes and other grades, or other classes, I would say, they seem to want to take advantage of it. I mean, that's always our messaging. It's like, this is your last chance at a free public education. If you're interested in, you know, in a psych course, take it now, because you're gonna have to pay for that after this. And so it's hard to say what drives it exactly. I think it's just a case where, you know, we're offering, I think it's a good indicator that the coursework that we're offering and the programs that are available to kids are of interest to them and are relevant to them.
Yeah, I had wondered, when we talked about the cell phone policy, I had wondered out loud if that was perhaps something we might see, because if you cannot be in study hall on your device, is that incentive to take a class you might have been interested in before? And so I wondered if
I'm not sure I would connect those things.
No.
I mean, they may be loosely correlated, but I'm not sure that would be the strongest
argument
factor.
for it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And then with the SEL updates, is there any thought to perhaps increasing small lessons on executive functioning, organization skills, things?
Yeah, we've got a lot of things that I think are going to feed into our conversations around the advisory program. There's a handful of different things that are sort of out there that have either been, trying to think of how to describe it. There's a lot of opportunities, I would say. Like professional skills is, I think, an area that maybe we haven't talked about in a little while, but advisory is a great place for that.
Yeah.
I think, and it's not to say that I want to drift away from what we have completely, but I think that's certainly an area. Some of you know, other life skills that are important for kids to know, things that you don't, you know, even perhaps some enrichment opportunities for students. I think these are all things that are kind of in the mix. I can't say for sure exactly how we're gonna tease it all out. You know, I'd like to kind of stick to a framework where 9th graders are focusing on something, 10th grades on something, 11th grades on something. So it'll be a matter of kind of lining all this up and kind of theming it out and really kind of being intentional about what they're doing and what skills we're focusing on. But I'm excited about the energy that's around it. It's a positive energy, and advisory is something at a high school that feels like it's always in flux, like every 5 to 6 years. You know, I talk with other principals in the area, and there's rarely a year that goes by where somebody isn't talking about the advisory program. We just did this 2 years ago, we're having to do it again. But I think the cool thing about what we've got in place for that is, you know, this is year 5 of it. which is why I felt like year 4 last year was a good time to look at it, but this is year 5 of it, people know it. And instead of moving from nothing to something, which I think was the leap we initially made, now we're trying to take what we have and really optimize it. Yeah. And I think that's exciting to be there, as opposed to, what is it gonna be, what can we do with this? Is it something or nothing? Does the teacher get to decide? Does everybody do the same thing? I think we're a little bit through some of those debates, which I think is really good. Those are some of the hang-ups early on. I think when the program is implemented, who's doing that work, who's leading it, how is it getting done, what's the advisor's responsibility? We're through those walls now, which is great.
Right, and you planned a deliberate review of that for this summer,
Yeah.
right? And that'll be happening in a really playful way.
Yeah.
And I think, like, as you said, fortuitously, or, we wouldn't choose to have the school year we had, but under the circumstances, having it aligned with the NEASC work is actually really efficient and helpful.
Yeah.
So that you're not designing something and then later saying, oh, wait, it would have been better if we'd done.
Yeah, I think we'll be able to actually accomplish multiple things through this work that addresses some of our NEASC areas areas of concern we identified.
Well, I do apologize that we are over time, but we definitely want to make sure that we provide time for Michael Gage to give us a robust review of athletics and activities as well before people have to start leaving. I can see that some people have had to drop off because of scheduling already. So with that, I think we'll move to Mike.
Okay, so we're gonna focus on a few areas, but this should kind of go along with the athletic and activities school board presentations that we've done too. So it's kind of important to keep those in mind as we go through this, because you've already gotten kind of a glimpse into athletics and student activities at those school board presentation. Certainly, we offer a wide variety of sports and clubs at the high school, from team-based activities to individual opportunities. Our club programs span theater, music, STEM, leadership, and service opportunities. And so really the key idea here is that there's something for everyone. That whether a child wants to compete or create or serve, there's something available. Not to say that we don't want to continue to grow, and I think you've seen some of that in the other budget meetings in terms of, what we're looking to want, kids are looking to want to expand, but certainly we offer a lot of opportunities. On to the next one. So in terms of the middle school, kind of the same idea. Obviously, there's many ways that kids can get involved in middle school activities. Kathy pointed to that a little bit in her slide. There's opportunities for them to try multiple sports there, and also the club activities kind of mirror those things in terms of STEM or arts or leadership or service performance, Lego robotics, theater, builders club, those sorts of things. Certainly, the participation at this level also feeds into the high school programs, and there's probably more detailed information in the budget book starting around page 62 on our participation rates, but you can go on to the next slide too. But in terms of our trends for participation, we measure things in athletics. We kind of measure things against COVID still, because that was such a downtime in participation rates and things. And so, looking at that, and also in terms of athletics, not so much athletic activities, but when we talk about participation numbers, we're really talking about roster spots relative to participation opportunities. And because even if it's the same student that plays multiple sports, we still have to provide all of those same full services to that student each time that they participate. So when we talk about participation numbers, we really talk about it in terms of roster spots. And so in terms of the trends, certainly there's all kinds of opportunities for participation, like I said, but I think the takeaway is that students are highly engaged in Scarborough and after-school activities. It's important to this community. And it's really driven by, if you look at the participation numbers, it's really driven by interest and not necessarily school size. I think one of the things I wanted to highlight this year that I haven't done in the past is our booster support. We have hundreds, upwards of 500 volunteers that support our after-school programs through booster involvement, and they're a true partner in what we're doing in our department, whether it's athletics or activities. We're seeing a larger number of booster groups on the activity side as well. But certainly very active volunteer community with athletics and activities. They help in all kinds of areas in terms of fundraising or just strengthening school spirit and being there as a support to enrich our programs. I think why boosters matter, it certainly extends our staffing capacity in terms of how they help manage our programs and do those things that we could not do as really a small staff, full-time staff, doing all the things that we're able to do. I think that group brings a lot of energy, and there's a lot of hands that support our programs. So sometimes sometimes booster groups don't get all the accolades that they should, and they're certainly a true partner for us in terms of their support. In terms of numbers and participation rates, even though there's been a decline across the state, Scarborough continues to see an increase in their participation rate in after-school activities. And when you look at those numbers, and again, we talk about roster spots as opposed to different individuals, but for example, 2024, 2025, we had 902 students enrolled. We had 973 roster spots, which is a 107% participation rate. And in high school athletics, and similar numbers for clubs and as well as at the middle school too. So most kids, in other words, participate in something in Scarborough after school, some school-sponsored activity. So we'll go through that. And then our goals and priorities, I think you've already seen in some of the budget meetings, some of our requests for expansions and things that people want to do. Skiing, for example, is one of them, but certainly we want to, in terms of engagement, we want to try to identify those barriers for students that are not participating, and how can we kick those barriers out of the way? How can we make sure that our barriers to participation are reduced? So first of all, it's identifying those, and then secondly, how do we remove those barriers, for participation? Certainly, in terms of strengthening our operation, we continue to look at staffing. As you know, we have a school board policy related to our ratios, and we try to stay within that and work really hard to continue to do that, which a lot of times that comes in the form of booster support as well to be able to meet those expectations. But we've made such great progress in my time here. Certainly, when I started, there was not an after-school program that could run with the money that we received just in the operating budget. And so over time, we've been able to make investments to support the essential components of the programs. There's still some concerns around staffing and meeting those policy expectations, but I think we've made such great progress so far, and now we're in that kind of situation where we can try to maintain and grow when we can, but certainly not go back. And so anyway, we're kind of looking at that, and that's kind of in terms of our financial stability too. We have, on an annual basis, we get a lot of requests for new programs, and we take those seriously and look at every single one. And we try to look at every angle for it. Can what this particular group of kids want to do be part of another already existing group? Do we have to start something new? And we look at all those things, and as you know, there's a policy about starting new programs, and that's part of the process. When we look at that, what's the interest of all those things that are part of that policy for starting a new after-school activity. There's certainly some things coming down the pipe too that we'll have to take a look at in terms of MPA, Maine Principals Association sponsored activities, and then how does that work within our Title IX constraints? We engage in a self-study every year for Title IX and those equity kind of questions, and so as we begin to think about things that we have to add, we have to measure it against that as well. That is my quickest overview that I can do.
It was super comprehensive though, Mike. Very
Great work.
comprehensive.
I got up to get a snack because I thought I'd have time.
And he
You didn't give me enough
changed the
time, so.
slide.
Sit back down, look at that.
Hey, listen, you know,
Good job.
my friends around the table here will laugh at this, but we do kind of consider ourselves the front porch of a school department. And part of that is because it's certainly, without question, the most visible thing of a school department. You're in the newspaper every single day. And besides buildings and grounds, of course, it's probably one of the most visible things about a school department that helps engage the community. And so I think you've heard me at the school board meetings, school board presentations talk about this concept of education-based activities. And I think it's important to our community that students are engaged in these sorts of things. It's important to parents, and it's vitally important to students to complete their holistic education.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we see it every time you guys come into a board meeting, that the types of learning that students are doing in these after-school activities is so vital to their well-being, right?
Yeah, and when you know, to your earlier questions around chronic absenteeism, right? What are the reasons that get kids to school every day? For many of our students, it really is the offerings that we are able to provide in addition to, you know, to the coursework that they're engaged in.
Absolutely. I just did have a question. Do you think one of the barriers, I'm assuming, is transportation of children who would participate if there were more transportation options for them versus, you know, in terms of being able to stay after school for a practice or a club and then being, you know, is that a barrier? Is that one of the barriers or not?
I don't think so. I mean, we haven't experienced that. You're talking about if there was what is called in other school districts as an activity bus.
Right.
A bus that does things later. You know, it's hard to say whether that's a barrier. We're certainly not seeing that in our rates when you have 107% participation rate with over 70% different students that participate. I don't know if the information, if you look in the budget book starting around page 62, I don't know if the information, you know, would 100% support that, but at the same time, me being an athletic director would certainly take an activity bus, you know, because it's just another place to be able to say, you know, stay and take the bus home at 4 o'clock. And so it is a barrier, I suppose it would be, but we're not, the data doesn't show
Support that, right? So you have increase in participation despite.
I would say, I mean, I'm sure that there are students that aren't being identified to me that because of, staying after school. We have some conversations about that. We had one with, Mr. Terrio and I had one with a parent the other night at our 8th grade step-up night, and they were talking about staying after school, but we pointed out the fact that there are opportunities for kids to stay at school and wait for their practice, whether that's in the library until they close. We also open the cafeteria where kids can sit and wait for their practices or activities to start. And so we have a classroom in the downstairs area that we open up for students to go in and work on homework or whatever. And that's worked out pretty well, being unsupervised. One of the things that we're looking at is how do we, we have not done what we do at the middle school. The middle school, we pay for an after-school person to cover like for lack of a better word, a mandatory study hall that they go to. We have not had to do that. The high school kids are pretty self-reliant. From time to time, we have to redirect things, but for the most part, and I think that's important too, because at the high school, of course, you want to teach also, give kids some of those opportunities to learn some independence.
A gradual release of responsibility, right, is something that we're always looking at, and and I think, each family experiences different challenges in terms of how to make sure that you can get your kids from point A to point B, and I look around the room and I think most of us are parents, and we can probably recall, if we're not currently experiencing it, right? Like that it takes a village concept, right? And that, each of us independently might not be able to have solved a situation for our particular student, but with the, support and assistance of great friends and extended family members, et cetera, we figure out what we need to do, right? Because we understand that unfortunately there are limitations to the level of responsibility that the school district can take.
I think
we also provide some opportunities after school. We have a strength and conditioning coach that's on our staff, so kids can go into the fitness center after school. So there are some other opportunities as well.
Right, so they can be doing that while they wait for their, or before or after activity.
Yeah, I think one of the things I would say that the high school does really well, and the middle school has more supports because of the developmental age of the kids. But the high school, in my experience, I have folks reaching out to me, leaders reaching out to me and saying, hey, we have a kid who wants to play soccer, but we have some barriers. They need to get a physical, they need to get this, they need to get that. And they're all circling around that kid and saying, you're gonna play soccer, we're gonna get you there.
We'll figure it out, right.
So, I mean, I think that's something that they take really to heart as much as possible.
I do want to say, I don't have a question for you, but I do want to thank you for coming along with us on this journey to increase our exposure to all of the clubs at Scarborough High School and making sure the community is well informed about everything. We've done the athletics for so many years, which are super impactful, but it's also impactful to see the other clubs and the other alternative activities at the school that are available for the kids. So I really personally appreciated hearing what the clubs are doing and having that addition to our board meeting. So thank you for implementing that for us. It's been really great.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well.
And then I do have I mentioned this yesterday, but I'll mention it again. The only thing that I don't know, and I know it's nebulous and I don't know how we do it, but if we are reading the tea leaves correctly, that the cell phone ban will become permanent, and we know that the funding, once again, isn't going to be 100%. That's the only thing I don't know if we did need additional money next year, if we haven't budgeted for it, how we're going to accomplish that.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we need to go back and take a look at, the specifics of the current legislation and, expected timelines. But again, as you heard us say globally, right, like this is our first reading, and we understand that there's gonna be some items in motion, and so I feel confident that by the time we get to second reading, that we'll be able to solidify more so what lots of things look like, including the potential legislation.
Yeah, hopefully
for
we'll know in a
supplements.
couple weeks, right, one way or the other.
It's a short
Right,
session,
how it's
so-
gonna, yeah, how it's gonna play out.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Shannon, I do have that, I have sort of a running list of things that need to be talked about between first and second reading, and that's, one of those things. Like, do we need some kind of placeholder for that work? What we need is someone to volunteer to be the cell phone monitor.
Oh, boy.
3 or 4 more staff members maybe would do it. Yeah, so the last slide is all of our dates, and I think I said yesterday, all the questions that might arise, Finance Committee's meeting on Tuesday, Board is having first reading on Thursday. If there's stuff that you wanna know answers to before that, great, we can run that through Finance, you can run things through Diane and me.
The only thing I will tell you is the April 17th date, you would wanna probably move that to the 30th, because what I didn't realize until Monday was that the 16th is the start of our break. So we were gonna move
So
our,
your board meeting is gonna be on the,
Our board meeting
okay,
won't be on April 16th.
we're shifting.
so that public hearing. Sorry, I should have included you, Kate, I apologize.
That is okay, so the April 16 board meeting
Will be the 30th.
is actually April 30. And that's fine, because again, that's that intermediate time when we're like building up to second reading, so we might actually have some more useful information at that point than we would on the 16th. No action item needed on that day. Great.
All right, well, if there are no objections, we will adjourn at 11:25. Not too bad again.
And thank you so much,
Thank you all
everyone.
for joining